Hey folks, on Soft Plastics 101 today we're going to talk about crustacean style plastics. So I don't know about you guys, but I love a feed of crustaceans, be it prawns, crabs, that type of thing, and the fish are the same. They are tasty critters. You know, whether it's the fresh or the salt, if you present them with a prawn or a crab or a yabby style presentation, often can get a bite on those. So in terms of Z-Man plastics, there's a ton of different crustaceans available, and I'll just quickly run you through a few and how you might effectively fish those. So starting off with a little crab presentation. So we mentioned this guy in creature baits because he fits in that category as well, but that is a perfect little crab presentation. So ideal around the canals where little creatures fall off the bottom of the pontoons and that sort of thing. So good on the brim, good on the trout where they're chasing insects and beetles and things. But that guy there, remember when you get him out of the packet, you need to pop his claws apart so you can get those two separate little curl tails working effectively. So that's a deadly little crab presentation up on the flats for brim and those sorts of things, or in around those canals as well where those crabs are lurking on all of that pontoons and rock walls and things. So crustaceans, there's a little fella. Step up a bit in size, you've got a 2.5 inch TRD craws. So as his name suggests, he's a little crawfish profile. But also you can imagine in the salt, it's a yabby or it's a crab. It's got enough strike triggers to attract that fish to come and eat it, be it a brim or a flathead or whatever species you're targeting. I reckon it'd have a crack at that little bite-sized morsel. So being Z-Man 10 times tougher Laztec, it's also buoyant. So when you jig head rig that, when you're sitting it on the bottom, those little claws will actually float up off the bottom and wave around and attract the fish to the lure. So it calls the fish to the lure, and also when they strike around those claws, they're finding that hook. So that's little TRD craws. Prawn profiles, always effective. Everything eats a prawn, I like to say. There's a couple of different prawns. So this is the Z-Man scented shrimps. So lots of legs there, feelers, a natural looking prawn profile. And then we've got our 3.5 inch easy shrimps. And it's available in a stack of different colors, whether it be a reaction bait type color or more natural colors. You can get that in a bunch of different colors, and it is a realistic looking prawn. It's got the antenna, it's got the eyeballs, it's got the shape of the prawn there. Set up so that you can easily weedless rig it, or you can standard rig it on a headlock jig head as well. And segmented tail for lots of action and glide in the water. So as you can imagine with prawns, a lot of the time you watch prawns in the water compared to baitfish. Baitfish are flicking around all over the place. Prawns often don't do a lot of movement. They'll flick away a bit, they'll glide. So a lot of the time when fishing prawns, it's more subtle movements of the rod, drifting it into structure, drifting it into snags, and just giving it a few twitches and letting it glide. In saying that, you may be out on the water and you see prawns flicking on the surface at times, and the fish are feeding up higher in the water column, and then you can get a prawn and you can fish it, twitch it, and move it across the surface a bit more to attract that sort of surface bite on the prawn as well. There's an easy shrimps with a difference. So this guy comes pre-rigged. So you can just grab a packet of two and off you go fishing, throw your prawn around. And it comes with the jig head already rigged inside the plastic, locking it in place there. Then you can get others down the track and replace them on that jig head should you lose your shrimp, lose your easy shrimps. But that comes in at about 1/4 ounce of weight, which is perfect for the flathead on the flats and those sorts of things. And it also is segmented weight, so you can clip pieces off that with some cutters if you want to lighten the weight to fish the, say, the barra drains or fish those shallower snags or up around the mangrove edges. So that's the easy shrimps, a really nice prawn imitation. And there's another, that's a 4 inch turbo craws. So again, it's that crustacean style presentation, being a crawfish. This one again, like our crusties, we need to separate those claws that are injected together in the mold. So we just pop that off that side, pop that extra piece off that side, and there we go. We've got those two very lively claws again ready for action. So you can imagine big bass and yellow belly and cod, or even put that on a spinnerbait or chatterbait as a trailer. It'd be nice and deadly. Another trick with this one, you may have seen the chapter we did on frogs. This guy also works well as a frog style of presentation, so you can buzz it across the surface, get those floors clapping and flapping on the surface, and boof, barra or cod or those sorts of things will eat it off the top as well, bass that like eating a surface presentation. So that's another crustacean. So there you go, whether it's crabs, yabbies, crawfish, whatever you're trying to represent, there's a load of different crustacean style plastics that will effectively imitate that food source for the fish. So let's have a look quickly at how to fish crustaceans out there in the water. All right, so in terms of retrieving crustacean style plastics, as we mentioned earlier, you may find on the surface prawns flicking around, and those prawns could be getting harassed by trevally or bream or other species. So if you do see a lot of prawn flicking or disturbance on the surface, you can flick that prawn out there or that crustacean out there and keep it up high in the water column. So you can keep the rod tip up and just flick the tip of that rod, and you'll actually see that prawn coming across the surface there, and he's flicking and twitching like a prawn would do if it was fleeing on the surface. And it's pretty awesome at times to watch if fish are zoned in on those prawns. They'll chase the prawn right and even eat it at your feet right beside the boat if they're really, really fired up on prawns. So it's just a flick out to where the activity is, keep that rod tip up, keep that tip twitching, and just slowly wind. So we're slow rolling, but we're adding that twitch, and that prawn's coming across the surface, twitching and flicking across the surface like it's trying to flee, trying to get away from the predator. So that's if there's surface activity. Most of the time, I'm throwing crustacean style plastics where crustaceans live. So broken weed flats or up in around structure, rock walls, those sorts of things where you'll find a lot of crustacean activity. And as I mentioned, crustaceans aren't generally flying around like baitfish. They're generally moving fairly slowly. You know, they don't want to get seen, so they'll be lurking and crawling and flicking a little bit if they feel like they're threatened. So I'll flick that plastic out there. Really good up north crustaceans in around that mangrove structure up in North Queensland for barra and jacks and those sorts of things, especially weedless rigged. We just allow that prawn to glide down into the structure, give it a couple of hops, not super aggressive hops, let it sink back down in there again. And our prawn plastic will hop out a little and will glide back down like a prawn. So we can give it that hopping retrieve where we hop it up off the bottom and allow it to sink back down again like it's kicking out of the weed or away from the snag, and then it's gliding back down to the bottom. Kick and glide back down, kick and glide back down to the bottom. So think about in your head, no matter what style of plastic you're using, think about what you're representing and try and represent that movement of that bait using your rod and your reel. And if you're imitating a baitfish or a prawn or a crab, think about what that thing might be doing in the water and try and represent it as closely as you can. Another way to fish a prawn, say along a mangrove edge. If I'm casting along a mangrove edge, I might just give it the lift. So I'll give it a lift and then allow it to glide back down again. A lift and then allow it to glide back down again. And that lift, you can vary how aggressive and how long that lift is. It might be an aggressive lift or it might be a smoother lift. And we're just making that prawn look like it's naturally kicking and gliding back down to the bottom again or in around that structure. So there you go. You can grab that 4-inch turbo craws if you like and buzz it across the top, or you can flick these guys up higher in the water column. Otherwise, it's more about that natural glide of the prawn and the fact that it looks a lot like a prawn, so it's going to get eaten on the drop. And then we just want to either hop it or lift it and then let it glide back down again. It'll often get eaten as it's gliding back down again. So that's crustaceans. Another deadly soft plastic option for anglers out there fishing both the fresh and the salt water. Fish on.